Hi, here we go with Chapter 5, A Glitter of Metal Panels. Olives again, Erik groaned as he joined his mum at the table. With bread and cheese, it's a very good diet. You will live a long time if you eat like this every day, his mum lectured him, cutting the bread as she did so. Hello, hello. Freshly scrubbed, Harald came into the room. For a while, there was silence as they all ate, Erik making a pattern from his olive stones. I think that we have to ask to be reallocated to coal mining, Harald said without looking up. Freya stopped eating. You want to work in a mine? It's the only guarantee we can stay together as a family. Harald paused, still looking at his plate. Rolfson says it's not too bad. But he only did it for a year. Freya sounded resigned, rather than seriously opposed to the idea. Harald tore apart a great piece of bread in his hands. There is another option, though. Erik caught them exchanging a serious look. I was thinking of a district-based appeals procedure, Harald continued. We need to explain to Erik exactly how a team challenge works. Freya rested her hand lightly on Erik's arm and looked intently at Harald. Hope District lodges a complaint that it is being discriminated against in the allocation of the remaining solar panels. 5 players each. Hope against a team fielded by central allocations. In other words, the best on the planet. And so we would have no more chance than I did alone? Harald shrugged. We might have a chance, a slim one, but only if I was to play. Erik paused, fork halfway to his mouth. Astonished, he held his breath and tried to avoid being noticed. So many questions, but he knew better than to pry. They would stop talking and send him away. How much of a chance? Freya continued her line of thought. About 1 in 5. We need a melee-based environment. Foggy weather would be good. Do it, Freya said firmly. Harald nodded, his eyes glistening with energy. The rest of the district suggested we try it. They will be pleased. Hope was built on a dry, rocky plateau. It could be seen for miles, far beyond the limit of the district for which it acted as a regional centre. Strangely, considering theirs was a world without violence, the original settlers had built a ring of white stone houses around the perimeter of the hilltop, like a defensive wall. Presumably, the idea was to mark a boundary, inside which lay the heart of the town. Over the centuries, Hope had grown, and the lower slopes of the hill being occupied by smaller, less well-constructed 2-room houses. The colour of the stone told the story. Whereas the higher houses were made of machine-cut, deep-quarried limestone, the lower ones were of an inferior, more easily obtained yellow sandstone. Visible above all the residences, on the highest point of the hill, was one great building of metal and glass, whose dark, translucent roof glittered with the violet rays of sunlight reflected from 100 solar panels. A subtle excitement in his dad's manner encouraged Erik to think that their visit to the town of Hope was concerned with more than submitting their much-reduced olive crop. But not until they approached the outskirts of the town did Harald say anything out of the ordinary. Son, your story of Cinderella and the pirate treasure is exciting, but you need to obtain more information. I know. Hope has a library where all the information ever learned about Epic has been stored. It is our right to be able to consult that information, so we are going to pay the librarian a visit. Erik had just taken the last turn on the donkey, uncomfortably squeezed between 4 large barrels of olives, so it was with physical pleasure, as well as to guard himself from the mocking looks of the city dwellers, that Erik dismounted and walked alongside the donkey. He rubbed the soft hair on Laban's long nose with some affection. They had grown up together, and, for Erik, Laban was more than a farmyard animal. He was a much-loved companion. As the path rose through the more humble houses to the older, prouder buildings, so the nature of life on the street changed. The long lines of washing gave way to ornamental gardens and fruit trees already showing the lemons and figs that would eventually ripen on them. No longer did stray dogs bark on the hot, broken paved streets, half angry, half friendly. The upper part of the town was the domain of well-fed cats, which could be spotted stalking carefully through the shadows or leaping gracefully from windowsill to the narrow cat walkways of garden walls. Then, past the outer ring of sturdy white residences, was the town square, busy with people bringing their harvest for accounting and communal storage. Each time that Erik had come to Hope, he had struggled through the same narrow paths left between the closely packed tents and stalls, so that he believed them to be a permanent feature of the town. But his dad insisted that after dark, the tents were taken down and the square emptied, becoming a place of quiet, unless disturbed by the near-human shrieks of cats using it as their battleground. And the people. It seemed impossible that so many people should live together, whether the innumerable families in the rough, dry stone shanties or the throngs that traded in the market. Impossible but exciting. So many people in comparison to their small village, that Erik always felt shy on coming to Hope, not least because there were many more girls his own age. In Osterfjord, there was only Ingeborg, and since they had grown up side by side as neighbours, she was more like a sister than anything else. Even from a distance, it was evident that the library was a very different building from the rest of the town. Its roof glittered with the reflections from hundreds of metal panels, all tipped slightly towards a bright sun. Several tall metal posts stood up from the roof. There were more glass windows in the walls of the building than in the whole of Osterfjord. Close up, it was stranger still. For a start, it was cool inside, despite the heat of the day. Also peculiar was a soft humming, like the sea but quieter and less rhythmic. At the centre there was a pit with a large circular table, around which were placed 20 chairs. They were all occupied, with people of different ages clipped up and in the world of epic. It was strange to see them, silent, moving only their heads, while in epic they would be running, shouting and fighting. Harald, and this must be Erik Haraldsson, a cheerful, balding man greeted them. Hello, Thornstein. You are right. This is Thornstein Erik. He is the Hope librarian. Erik shook hands with the librarian. Oh, poor lad. How did he do that? Thorstein was looking at Erik's face. Erik momentarily looked up at his dad's impassive face. I fell over when shaking the olive tree, sympathized Thorstein. Still, perhaps one day we will get a visit from the Mikkelgard dentist, and she can fix you up with a new tooth. Harald laughed cynically. We've been waiting 7 years for that. Thornstein nodded, admitting defeat on the point. So, Harald, Erik, how can I help? Erik needs information. Thornstein waited attentively. You tell him, Erik, urged his dad. It's all right, he added, noticing Erik's hesitation. Whatever you tell Thorstein will be completely confidential. As Erik told the story of Sindela and the pirate's treasure, an eager gleam appeared in the librarian's deep-sunk eyes. Interesting, very interesting. Follow me. Thorstein lumbered swiftly to his desk and clipped himself up. I will just be a moment. That's a good sign, son. Erik patted Erik on the arm. As Thornstein silently worked his fingers and turned his head back and forth, Erik looked around the library. It was decorated with scenes that had somehow been taken from the world of epic and mounted as pictures. Many of the scenes were familiar, pictures of New Haven, the cathedral, the amphitheatre, but also there were strange scenes. Erik walked over to where he could see a warrior in a red cape standing on a glacier. In the distance, austere mountain peaks formed row after row of jagged white teeth. It seemed as though the dark, heavy sky had forced open the jaws of the world and was resting on the sharp points of its fangs. The caption read, Olaf the Red exploring the mountains of hate. Dad, who was Olaf the Red? Harald shrugged. I don't know. He must have existed a long time ago. Nobody explores anymore. Here. Thorstein was back with them. He smiled at Erik's eager face. Good news. The librarian glanced around to check that no one could hear. As far as I know, unless it has gone unreported, which is most unlikely, your quest has not been undertaken before. So the treasure could still be there? Erik looked to the librarian for confirmation. Oh, indeed it could. Your Captain Sharkey is a listed character who was a pirate some 50 years ago. The Queen's Messenger was a royal ship based in Cassiopeia around the same time. It is a very, very promising quest, young man. Thorstein's face wrinkled with lines round the eyes that showed he was accustomed to smiling. Great. After the graduation tournament, I'll sail to Cassiopeia then. A large hand reached out to touch Erik on the shoulder, as if to check him. Thorstein was sombre again. Not so fast, young one. This is a quest that you need preparation for. The Skull Islands are somewhat explored, and they are home to very dangerous predators. The sea is full of sharks, but worse, rocks have a nest in a mountain of one of the islands. You, and whoever comes with you, will need to have excellent skill levels and equipment. Erik let out a long sigh. Harald glanced at Thorstein, who rolled his eyes up, as if to share a slight amusement at the impetuous nature of youth. Take your time, young man, said the librarian. A quest like this will make you rich, but not if you hurry. Then you will be dead, and it will be lost to you forever. Well now, we are without a solar panel. We do not have time on our side, Erik muttered bitterly in reply. You also, Thorstein looked cast down. Times are getting hard. That brings up my reason for being here. Harald cast a shrewd look at the librarian. I have a team of 5 who are willing to challenge central allocations. We wish to lodge a complaint that the Hope District is facing discrimination in the distribution of solar panels. That is your right, of course, but I would urge against it. You cannot defeat their teams. You will die for no gain. Thorstein shook his head solemnly. Enter the complaint, please. Harald said no more, so, after a pause, Thorstein lumbered back to his chair and sank heavily back into it. With one last sombre look their way, he clipped himself up. Soon he stood up again. The complaint is registered. There will be a trial in the amphitheatre in 2 weeks' time. 8 o'clock our time. Thank you, Thorstein. The librarian shrugged. I sympathize with you, but I am sorry that you're spending your lives so uselessly. There we go. Tomorrow we'll find out how the duel goes.